I'm going to welcome up to do the final live performance of the afternoon someone obviously very special. He was somebody that was close to Frank, somebody that grew up with Frank, somebody that is, and to be completely honest with you, when I spoke to this person, Ivan, who's going to be coming up, it's Frank's brother, and I spoke to him on the phone for the very first time in my life. Never ever spoke, we never talked before this whole thing, and I thought I was talking to Frank. I was like, wait a minute, this is Frank. That's exactly the way I felt. Same everything. And playing is the same thing. You can feel the love and the vibe and how close they were and how special it is. And it's an honor for me, and I believe everybody here in the collective, to be able to have Ivan as part of this and have him come up and play. And I just want to extend again my heartfelt everything to you, family, and you're always going to be part of the collective family, and we always will have a collective family, and that's what we are. We're one big family, and that never ends. You're always part of the collective family. And anything that we can do, anything that you can be part of, you are more than welcome. And with that, I'd love to bring you up to the stage, Mr. Ivan Katz, if you're ready.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, is mic's on? Okay, actually, first of all, thank you for switching the drums to lefty for me. There's a funny story with that. Let's see, I'll come up here. Oh, no problem. So yeah, actually, I think this is probably room 1 at the 14th Street Collective. Yep. And Frank first brought me up to the collective. Actually, it's funny. The first time he brought me to the collective, it was in their original location. Trivia questions. Anybody know the first location of the Drummers Collective?
42nd Street.
Thank you. So this is 1982, all right? And Frank's 2 years older than me. 1982, I was 13. Frank was not only drumming on the drum set, he drummed on everything in the house. Everything, he couldn't stop drumming. Sitting at the dinner table, it was great. And, our dad, Dick Katz, very acclaimed jazz pianist, played with Roy Eldridge, J.J. Johnson, Kai Winding, Benny Carter, Miles Davis even. Dick Katz. So we had music in our household. And I think my first instrument, I was studying the clarinet. But all of the music I got into started with my dad. He got me into the MJQ, Modern Jazz Quartet. That's like the first records he played for me, MJQ for me and Frank, and Ray Charles. But then Frank would just bring home all these records and share them with me, like the CDs. I remember the day he brought home Songs in the Key of Life. It had just come out. He's like, Ivan, check it out, man. It's a 2-record set. And he would just put that on, and we would just sit and listen to it, and the love Frank had for Stevie, man. But anyway, I'm going to talk a little more after all that. Let me just get these a little more. Well, I'm going to set these up in a second, but let me say one more thing about this room 1 and the kit that was funny about all this. And let me talk about 42nd Street real quick. I'm jumping around. So when Frank first brought me, I said, I was 13, I'm playing my clarinet, but all the music I'm into, I'm like tapping on, I just couldn't stop drumming on myself. I'm like, Frank, you got to show me the drums, man. You got to bring me up to the collective. So he's like, all right, 42nd Street. Now, this is 42nd Street in 1982. Ain't no Disney, okay? So if you wanted to know how do you find the collective, it was in this big old office building, which is still there. Well, you know what the landmark was? It's the building with the peep show on the ground floor. The entire ground floor, not just a little window. Peep show, like neon lights. This is 42nd Street. And a little door on the side takes you up. I forgot what floor to the collective, all right? So that's the first collective. Now, they moved in 1983 over here. And 14th Street, above the McDonald's. Me and Frank knew that McDonald's. We used to go there all the time. I mean, my dad would take me there to have my French fries when I was 6 on school break, because we grew up in the Village, 12th Street, 2 blocks from there. Anyway, room 1. So the original owners of the collective, Paul Siegel, Rob Wallace. Now, Paul's office was right across the way from room 1. Anybody doing something in room 1, Paul was hearing it, and so was everybody in the lounge. And this is why it's the collective, all right? So I'd go in there and have to move the drums around lefty, and Paul would come in, he'd say, be careful with those brand new Yamaha drums. Make sure you put them back to righty. I'm like, okay, Paul. You know, I was 14. You know, I got another story about all that too. The fun thing is the lounge is outside, so if you're throwing down in room 1, everyone's hearing you, and this is what the collective is about. I remember one time I'm playing in there. I was a beginner. I come out, Frankie Malabe sitting on the couch. He's like, you're getting better, but don't speed up on your fills. That's the kind of, you know, it wasn't just about the lessons you were taking. It's everybody listening to everybody and hanging. Hey, man, let's go in room 6 and trade 4s. There's nobody in there right now. Because every room had 2 sets facing each other. And so Frank, he's like, Ivan, you're a lefty. You got to set it up backwards. And so I mirrored him. And I'd get in a room and play with Frank, and I would just mirror him. And I'd keep the groove when Frank did his Frank shit. So Frank gave me the groove. So give me a second here. I'm going to talk a little more just while I'm positioning these drums, and thank you for helping me. Story of my life, lefty. So we're going to play, and I'm really looking forward to rocking over here. We are going to play Herbie Hancock tune, Watermelon Man. The Headhunters, as in the Headhunters album version. Dun, 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 dun. And then I'm going to talk a little more. All right, let's see. We're almost good to go. Dun, dun, dun. All right, let's see here. Oh, you got a key? Yeah, can you loosen this? Does it need the key? I just need to bring it down slightly. Oops, all right. Yep, that'll work. Actually, is there any way, can we bring this ride over here? Thank you. So let me talk another minute while we're fixing this. So, all right, so back to the collective spirit, all right? So, yeah, cats would just jump in a room and trade 4s and trade ideas all the time. And Jason was talking about Mike Clark. I was just on the phone with Mike. I think he's watching right now. What's up, Mike? Mike was best friends with Frank. And I always knew when Frank was on the phone with Mike, because Frank would talk like Mike. You'd hear Frank on the phone and be like, yeah, man, those cats. I was like, oh, he's talking to Mike. They'd be on for hours. Back in the day, you know, we're in the apartment, you know, there ain't no cell phones. So, you know, there's one line and there's a couple extensions on the line. I could never get on the phone because Frank be on the phone for hours with Mike. I'm like, Frank, let me make a phone call. You know, it's back. But I love listening to those 2 cats chop it up. And I'm going to talk more, but I got to play. So, you guys ready to rock some Watermelon Man? Can we give it up for John on bass, Chris on keys, and Chris on guitar? So Frank gave me the groove, you know? Frank gave me the groove, and I'd be grooving in the room with him, and he'd be playing the Frank stuff. But you see, Frank was deep because he had the nastiest groove in the whole world and the nastiest chops. That's the winning combination. And so one of the things that really used to inspire me is watch Frank playing with bands when he was young, and all the cats were way older, right? Experienced. Frank would be doing these R&B gigs up in Harlem, some real heavy cats. Frank was like 16, I was like 14, and he'd had this big ball of red hair, putting down the nastiest groove in the whole world, and let me like. He'd just be putting it down, like barely moving. And after I talk, when we watch this video of Frank playing, you're gonna see how much stuff he's dealing out, but it's like watching a good chef, right? You ever watch a really good chef and they're like slicing up 8 billion, but it's like effortless, because it's in their blood. They know they ain't gonna slice their fingers like, that's how Frank was like this chef on the drums from the time he was born, man. So Jason was talking about the Caribbean thing, and I'll shine in on that. I grew up in this beautiful family, my mom and my dad and Frank, and they loved to go to the Caribbean. And that's how the Caribbean thing got in our blood, because we would hear like calypso, soca bands playing that natural groove. And my dad, he would say like, he's like, yeah, man, one of my dad's favorite drummers is a jazz drummer named Al Harewood, but he's from the Caribbean. My dad was like, they swing differently down there. You know, so even like, they'd be playing like, that sometimes with some steel drums, and man, that got into our blood. And then, so one of the things I got real deep into when I was studying up at the Collective, I was studying with Kim Plainfield, Frank, and Kenwood too. Kim was such a trip, man. He was great. He would bust my balls. Because sometimes I would just go off on a tangent, and Kim would look at me like, Ivan, what relevance does that have to our lesson today? But I got real heavy into the reggae. In fact, I went to hear Herbie Hancock with his rocket thing. It was the main thing. The opener was this band called Steel Pulse. And I heard that drummer, man, and it was like, his name was Grizzly. He just sat there dealing that out all night. He didn't have to prove anything. It was just coming from the heart. So I got real deep into the reggae, and Frank loved the fact that I was into the reggae, and he kind of brought some of my reggae concepts into his book and like the tape and CD that came with it. Can we play a little reggae? Let's play that Exodus. I'm gonna start off with this is called a Steppers beat. can't talk. But so the reggae got into my blood, definitely. And spare you my life story, but then I went on to do a lot of cool touring, reggae gigs. The other thing that got into my blood, I'll just play a little bit of, is hip hop. So I got the stage name, and I think this is really cool that you guys have the whole electronic DJ thing here. Because I got the stage name, the Ivan 09, which is the human 909. And 909 was this classic drum machine because I started this live hip hop band back in the 90s, and I love to rock like. Get real deep into that kind of stuff. And it's interesting, right? Like, Drummers Collective, cats would go, they'd be like, oh yeah, Ivan, he's the reggae guy. He's the reggae hip hop guy. And that's what the collective is about, is all these different things, you know, these different influences. The other fun memory, I would come up, like when you came up the elevator, the janky elevator, you know, you smell McDonald's. You get up to the 4th floor, and you open the door, and there's just drums, life everywhere. Just drums, it's just magic, man. You know, and there's that lounge, there's room 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then 6 was the big room you could try to nab, where they had the roads and shit. And sometimes you just try to nab a room. Because back in the day, it was $27 a month, and you could sign up for 6 hours a week. But the whole scam was you sign up for your 6 hours, but you just hang whenever someone isn't there. Cat's like, all right, let's go in there, all right, let's go in here. Couple more memories, and let me know if I'm going too long. So, because I really appreciate you, Tony, and I appreciate the collective. This is beautiful. So, in the lounge, yeah, one time Frankie Malabe was hanging. Sometimes Jocko be hanging in the lounge. He'd just be sitting there, hey, Ivan. So what, and we were all like, oh, it's Jocko. One time, he went in room 1, and he's like, yeah, I'm a drummer too. And he started throwing down. Now, whenever somebody got loud in room 1, Paul would be like, he'd come in, and he'd give you the eye, like, you need to bring it down, right? Cats knew that. They would laugh at it. Sometimes they'd play loud on purpose, right? I love fucking Paul. I saw him not that long ago. It was hilarious, though, right? So Jocko's in there fucking wailing, and it's loud as fuck. Paul doesn't know who's playing. He comes in, the door opens, you know, we're all laughing. Paul walks in, he's like, he realizes it's Jocko, right? But Paul is Paul. He still doesn't want to hear the shit. He's trying to work in the office. He's like, Jocko. But like, Jocko's intentionally ignoring him and shit. And Paul's like, Jocko. It was fucking great. That's the fucking collective for you. Another cat who was my bedroom, Michael Carvin, would be up there. And he'd be like, Ivan, they're terrible. What's up? And the collective, I wanted to bring technology into the collective. This is the 80s, though. They had some mics and shit that I would always kind of like borrow without telling them and try to hook them up and shit. And then Paul would be like, hey, those are biodynamics, be careful. And then I tried all this other shit, like taking broken Walkman headphones and making them mics. I was just inventing shit up there. The collective was just a place. And that's what the spirit of this is. And I think it's really beautiful to be able to marry the DJ with the drums, because the new generation, they need to hear more drums, all right? They need to hear the foundation. You know, it's, I toured with this guy called Gerald. He's from Manchester. He's one of the inventors of the drum and bass electronic style. And it was cool. He was doing all his electronic shit, and I was rocking it over, I was like some jungle shit, like. Gerald was like, oh, it's just like some James Brown beat sped up, you know. But he said, everyone's got to have actual air being moved. And that's what he meant about the drum, right? So it's beautiful that we have a DJ school and a drum school together. That's very unique. And that's something I think we really got to build on. Let's see how we're doing on time. I want to give a shout out to all our drummers, Dave, Alex, Tobias, and Jason. You guys all really lit it up. As Tony said earlier, Frank lived and breathed the collective. You know, and I'm almost done. I grew up in a really crazy, passionate household. You know, my dad is this master jazz pianist. Frank is this virtuoso drum prodigy, and my mom is just this passionate woman of adventure. But there was also a lot of discourse. Families are fucking crazy, okay? And there would be some crazy shit jumping off in my household, and Frank would be up in it. And then I'd see him up at the collective, and Frank was just shining, running shit. That brought out the beauty in Frank. Frank is the Drummers Collective, the collective. So Frank lives on in this school, and Frank lives on in me and everyone that was influenced by him. Tobias, Jason, Dave, Alex, everybody that was touched by him. And then there's a lot of people touched by Frank that don't even realize, like you said, Tony, that is Frank. So the last thing I want to say, and thank you so much for having me, as we try to reason with why we don't have Frank, there's a whole bunch of medical details, never mind all that. What I want to say, and we all know this in this room, Frank wasn't playing drums during the pandemic. We know the first effects of pandemic, unfortunately, would be people catching COVID, worst case scenario on a fatal level, right? But then there's secondary effects that we all experience, all right? So a secondary effect for Frank is he wasn't drumming. And drums is life. That's what we know in here. So Frank lives on in this school and in each of us. Thank you so much for having me. I know you're gonna show a video now. The first thing you're gonna see is me and Frank playing at the Blue Note on my birthday in 2009. You see both of us rocking. And then I believe you're gonna show an interview. And I'll probably dip out for a little while and come back and say what's up to everybody in the end. Love you guys. Thank you for having me.